Grand Risings. Today is Tuesday, February 22nd, and this is your Shekinah Wisdom Podcast. Today, my lovelies, I want to talk to you about moving through toxic cycles. The first thing that I implore you to do when you're going through a cycle of toxicity is to isolate yourself. Isolation is important because we don't want people coming into that space and you are infecting other people with your toxicity. How do you know if you are enmeshed in a toxic cycle? Well, one way you can determine that is by looking at your interactions with people around you. Is it a positive, peaceful, or is it turbulent? Is there friction in your communications? Are you having these same type of outcomes with different people? If that is the case, then a detox is in order. You should detox yourself before you engage in relationships, whether it's business, personal, or familial. And the reason for that detoxification is so that what you're putting out is what you're getting back. If you're full of toxicity, you're going to be moving in toxicity and not even be aware of it. And like I said, one of the litmus tests that you can do is look at your interactions with people externally from you. When you are embroiled in a toxic situation, and you have been for a long time, sometimes that toxicity becomes normal. And if you have people around you that are not helping you move through that toxic cycle, and they're co-signing the behavior, you'll never grow past that point. Hurt people hurt people. That's a given. So if you see a person in pain, yes, you can give them support, but you can only do it safely. It's like saving a drowning victim and you're a lifeguard. One thing that they teach you in lifeguard training is that when you are saving someone, that same person that you're saving could be drowning you in the process. So it's important that you safeguard yourself while assisting others. And it's okay to love people from a distance while they go through their healing cycles. Because sometimes if you love them too closely, you can get infected with whatever that they were infected by. And then it'll start weighing on your psyche. And then you'll start showing up like that individual. So that's why it's important to quarantine yourself when going through toxic cycles. We've learned a lot during this pandemic, right? We learned the importance of getting by yourself and doing self-care, self-love, engaging in activities that bring out your best self without the external chatter. Another thing we learned about is when you are sick, you should quarantine. Because if you do not quarantine, you risk infecting others with your sickness. There's only certain skilled people that should be around you when you are sick. And those are your healthcare providers. Those are the people that are going to shine light on you and bring out the best in you. But you have to be careful that when you're sick, you're not coughing on people and making them sick as well. And you don't want to make sick the people that are there to help you get well. So we have to take some level of accountability. So that's when you take personal measures to ensure that you are not infecting other people with the things that you're afflicted with. So these lessons were very essential. And it was much needed. We all needed to sit down. A lot of people was tired of the everyday ebb and flow. And guess what? We got what so many people wish for. But, as with most things we wish for, when we get it, we're not satisfied. Why? Because the grass is always greener. We're always looking for greener pastures. Not even taking the time to water the grass where we are. And watering the grass where you are includes self-care. Watering yourself. And you will know when you have arrived at a healed space, when you are no longer leading conversations with what ails you and what pains you and what has pained you. When you have healed, there's no need to talk about the situations that brought you affliction if you're not utilizing it as a testimony of someone, to show someone that they can overcome it too, because you've been through it and you've experienced it. And you know that there's something on the other side of what they're experiencing. And with time and proper care, they'll be able to arrive there too. That's why it's important for us to share our mistakes with one another. We cannot assist one another if we don't know what the problems are. We have to make sure that we have a safe environment that we can go to and vent to and be able to be nurtured as we go through negative experiences in life. And there'll be people there to provide you with resources to help move you past that point. One thing I shed is when people take a self-righteous attitude and feel the need that they have to be the justice sword wielder. When truthfully, if that mirror was internalized, they could do so much more for the world by making corrections within themselves, by modeling proper behavior. Like when people are set on exposing people's weaknesses and faults, that shows an insecurity within that person, right? Because they have to show you in a negative light in order for them to feel exalted. That's toxic. And if you're involved with people like that, know that that's toxic. Sometimes we don't know what's toxic because we've been in toxic situations or reared in toxic situations. That toxicity seems normal. And then when people non-toxic join the mix, you look at them as being toxic when the toxicity lies within us. We have to be more accountable for our ways and actions and how we move. We can't do things and hide our hand. If you're going to do something, stand on what you did. Stand on it firmly. Because that's the only way we're going to grow together. Remember, it's all in the process of getting the lead out of the paint. And one time we used lead in the paint because we thought it was great until we learned that it was toxic. So once we learned it was toxic, what did we do? We stopped putting lead in the paint. And that's what we got to do with life. But we can't do that if we don't share mistakes with one another. And we can't do that if we try to exploit one another's mistakes. Because I'm going to tell you something. When you exploit others, guess who's going to be exploited? That's why it's important for you to study the 12 universal laws before you deal with any form of energy manipulation. And energy manipulation does not just come in a form of magic and things of that nature. It comes in a form of when you try to manipulate people. You know? And what is the repercussions of that manipulation? There's always going to be long-term repercussions. But being that people don't see it at the time that they're creating these infractions continue to go on. The greatest person for you to check is yourself. Because if you are attracting certain people in your life, it's because they're reflecting you in some shape, form, or fashion. So rather than pointing fingers at them and figuring out they're wrong, sometimes you have to do a self-reflection. And when you self-reflect, you can make those changes within yourself that you want to see in your environment. And once you make those changes, if your environment would change accordingly, whether the people that's currently there will level up to those changes, or they will shift out and the people that reflect those changes will show up. We have to stop having this possessive approach in life and feeling that our opinion is the opinion and that people have to feel the way that we feel about things. That's not true. In my journey, I was so much so stuck in my ways and felt that, things had to be my way. But as I grew and matured, I realized that we are all individual cells or individual functions. And within those individual functions, we have individualized tasks. And you have to allow people to live out what that is. And it may differ from what it is that you're doing. And you don't have to have people in your circle that is not moving accordingly. That's why the body has different systems, right? So everything can run smoothly without friction. But you can't manipulate those type of situations. Because when you manipulate who comes in and out based on your fears and insecurity, you're not going to have the optimum results that you're looking for. Life is a humbling process. And everyone gets a piece of humble pie at some point if their ego is out of control and it's inhibiting their life lessons. You're going to get a humbling lesson. We all do. So why, when people are going through their humiliation rituals, we laugh? Guess who's going to be next? You again. When people are not living the way you want and you start wishing ill on them, guess who's going to be the next person ill is going to be wished on? Because someone else feels that you're not living the way they want you to live. Manipulation of people and energy, when you do that, you got to be mindful of the repercussions of such actions. And you got to be willing to deal with the repercussions. Because that's going to be the outcome. You dealing with the repercussions. The reason why they say, do unto others as you want others to do unto you, is because that's a universal law. What you put back out, you're going to get it back. And it might not come back right away. That's why a lot of people continue to do crazy stuff, because sometimes it doesn't come back right away. Sometimes they'll come back within your children. And your children have to experience those lessons that you missed. Why? Because they're your evolution. They're part of you. So that's why you should think twice before making these decisions on what you're going to do with your time and energy every day. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to use it to benefit yourself and others? Or are you going to use it to continue to cause destruction and chaos to your life and others? Some people like chaos. And if that's their path, that's their path. Everyone has a different path for a reason. Some people's path is chaos. Their job is to bring chaos. Why? Because through that chaos, there's some type of learning experience that's going to be had for all parties involved. And I'm learning that that's okay. I just know that when those individuals show up, I'm here to learn something. What am I here to learn? What do I need to tighten up about? What lesson has this person came to teach me? And once that lesson is learned, you thank them, allow them to move on. Because I look at like our interactions that we have, our day-to-day interactions are like soul contracts that we have with people to teach us certain lessons. And once those contracts have been fulfilled, I allow them to move on. Just like in a job. If you had a job, say if you had a temp assignment and you know from this month to this month you're going to be working here. Once that time frame is up, you move on. You don't harbor resentment. You move on to the next assignment. Whether it's permanent, temp, full-time, personal endeavor, whatever you do, you're moving on. That's how you have to do with our interactions with people, even unsavory people. They're here to teach us. They agreed to teach us these lessons. So thank them and move on. So you can move on to your next lesson. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to go through trials and tribulations. That's okay. You're going to get mad. You're going to yell. That's okay. It's all part of life. But be more compassionate with yourselves as you're going through it. Because when you're more compassionate with yourself, you could be more compassionate to others. That's why it's important to love yourself first and foremost. And that's hard. It was hard for me because I grew up in a toxic environment. You know, we inherited a toxic world growing up in the 80s and, and 90s. We developed a tough, hardened world. That was not like the world that our forefathers had came from. And we had no plan of action because no one experienced what we were experiencing at the time. And so we had no one what we can talk to about our experiences. All we could do is go through it. It's like the movie Lord of the Flies. And to sit here and look down on someone because of mistakes that they made in an unguided tour is preposterous. We cannot grow by kicking one another down. If we know what each other's weaknesses are, well, how can we help strengthen those weaknesses? Right? In a positive way. Instead of in an egotistical fashion so that you can look like you are on the pedestal above everyone else. Rather than taking an approach like, let us all heal together. Because we know we've always raised in toxicity. We've all inherited a toxic environment. Once you start looking at things like that, you could become more compassionate to people around you. But until you continue to look at things like us versus them, this side versus that side, and the likes, we're going to continue to have these problems. Because everybody that you see is a reflection of you in some shape, form, or fashion. Do you see it? And if it's a reflection that you don't like, make those corrections within self and model that behavior. And then you'll have testimonies. And people can see it in real time, how it's done. Love yourself so others can learn how to love themselves as well. And they can also learn how to love you by the love that you are applying to yourself. You are training people how to love you. But if you are leading in fear and allowing your past experiences to dictate your current and present experiences, you're going to be at a loss. Because when we go through bad experiences and we become hardened from life and from letting people in, you're not allowing the universe to balance things out and bring in your reward. Life is not all about getting penalties all the time. Sometimes there's opportunities for you to feel great. Wake up in the morning and be motivated to be a better person today than you was yesterday, with goals of being a better person tomorrow than today. That is the great part of life, that we have the opportunity to do that. But sometimes we surround ourselves around with people that inhibit that growth and development. They don't allow you to grow past who you were yesterday, because they can control you with weaknesses, but they think they can control you, right? Because if you're not that person yesterday, and you can explain what you learned through those experiences, you already won. Because that's what life is all about. You're leveling up. You learning you. And sometimes we get a greater glimpse of ourselves through the people we interact with. And that's the time you give yourself a makeover, first and foremost. Check yourself. Make sure that you are not carrying on these same characteristics that you are shunning others for having. When you could do those type of reality self-checks on a daily, multiple times a day, we can raise the collective consciousness. If each individual took the time to do that, we can raise the vibration on this planet. My lovelies, I want you to think about everything that I just spoke on. I want you to know and understand that you are perfectly imperfect. And the only areas that you are imperfect in is to make way so someone else can have a place in the world. If you did everything all right and exact all the time, there's no need to be here with anyone else. But the fact that we are perfectly imperfect gives us an opportunity for everyone to feel that sense of belonging. You know why you're here. You're here because this cannot be fixed without you. This weakness that I have can only be fortified with someone that has the strength in that department. You understand? So it's about figuring out, what role do you take on in life? And you do it. Do it to the best of your ability. Do it every day. And do not allow people to tell you that your individual function is not your function. Don't get me wrong. You can be out of function at times. You can. And you'll know it because your environment will not be conducive for growth and development. That's a big red flag. And you'll be able to see where you're going wrong and make corrections accordingly. Be compassionate with yourselves, my lovelies. Be compassionate with others. And it will grow. It will evolve. It's time for evolution. No more revolving, doing the same things over and over. It's time to evolve. And the only way we're going to do it is if each of us do the individual self-care, self-loving, self-empowerment, self-evolution work necessary. If you need help in that department, you can head over to ShekinahWisdom.com and you can book an appointment. If you want art therapy, you can head over to IAMUcollection.com. And if you simply want to support the work we're doing here, you can cash out Unearthing of Truth. All right, my lovelies, you have a wonderful, amazing Tuesday.